Brothers, 5 men reached out. Their stories are sitting in my inbox, and they're as raw as it gets. Stories of betrayal, stories of loss, stories that'll make your stomach turn. I'm going to read them exactly the way they came in. Drop your thoughts in the comments, and if you've got your own story, the pinned comment has the email. This first one comes from a guy named Daniel. I never thought it would happen to me. That's the cruel part. You hear about false accusations in the news, you shake your head, maybe talk about how unfair the system is. Deep down, though, a part of you thinks, it's rare, it won't happen to me. That's how I thought too. And then it happened. And it didn't just bruise me, it annihilated me. I was 31, working as a project manager at a mid-sized company that specialized in logistics. Not glamorous, but it paid well, and I was proud of where I'd gotten. I wasn't born into money. My parents were blue-collar, paycheck to paycheck. I clawed my way into college with scholarships and crappy part-time jobs. I didn't drink, didn't screw around, didn't waste time. I worked, and it paid off. By 31, I had a good salary, a car I owned outright, a downtown apartment, and for the first time in my life, I felt like I wasn't drowning. My boss respected me. My team respected me. I had projects under my name that had brought in real profit for the company. I thought I was secure. Then came Julia. She was 25, fresh hire, transferred in from another branch. She walked into the office on her first day, and within an hour had everyone wrapped around her finger. Not because she was brilliant, though she was competent, but because she knew how to work people. She had that bubbly, charming energy that gets people to bend rules for you. She dressed just enough to turn heads, but not enough to get called out. She knew exactly what she was doing. At first, I didn't pay attention. I kept things professional. I was polite, showed her the ropes when needed, answered her questions, but I didn't go out of my way. I knew better than to get tangled up with a coworker, but she didn't leave me alone. She'd sit next to me in meetings even when there were open seats. She'd hover by my desk under the excuse of needing help. She laughed at my dry jokes louder than anyone else. She messaged me after hours with work questions that quickly slid into small talk. I ignored the hints. I stayed professional. I even started limiting how much I helped her because it was getting uncomfortable. But then came the company happy hour. We were at a bar, the whole department. People were drinking, loosening up. I had a couple beers but kept it light. Julia clung to me the entire time. She'd lean close when she spoke, touch my arm, laugh too hard. At one point, she leaned in and whispered, "I wish you were my boss in more ways than one." People around us laughed, thinking it was harmless flirting. I brushed it off with a polite smile. When it was time to leave, she went for a hug. I made sure it was brief, then left early. Monday morning, she was different. Cold, short, no more hovering. I figured maybe she realized she'd gone too far and felt embarrassed. Fine. I was glad she was keeping distance. 3 days later, HR called me in. I remember sitting in that office with the blinds half closed, the head of HR and one of the managers across from me with tight faces. They told me Julia had filed a formal complaint. She said I harassed her at the happy hour. She said I touched her without consent, that I'd been making her uncomfortable for weeks. I was stunned. My heart was pounding in my ears. I told them the truth, that she was the one making advances, that I had kept everything professional. They nodded like they were listening, but I could see it in their eyes. The decision had already been made. They suspended me, pending investigation. That phrase is corporate language for, "We don't believe you, but we don't want to get sued." The next months were hell. The investigation dragged on forever. HR asked me to give statements over and over, twisting my words. They questioned my coworkers. Of course, Julia's friends backed her up, saying they'd noticed I was too close to her. People who used to be friendly with me suddenly avoided me. I'd walk into the break room and conversations would stop. My phone stopped buzzing with invites. The guys I used to grab lunch with suddenly had other plans. It didn't just stay at work. Word got out. Someone leaked it to my social circle. Suddenly, my friends weren't answering calls. My parents sat me down and asked if it was true. I could see the doubt in their eyes. I had never felt so isolated in my life. I stopped sleeping. My appetite disappeared. I'd sit in my apartment staring at the ceiling, thinking about how one lie had burned down everything I built. Months later, HR called me in again. They said they couldn't prove harassment, but they also couldn't overlook concerns about my professional boundaries. They decided to part ways. That was their way of firing me without admitting it. Just like that, my career was gone. Julia, she stayed. Not only stayed, but thrived. 6 months later, she was promoted. I saw photos of her smiling at the company Christmas party on LinkedIn. It made me sick. I thought I'd bounce back. I had experience, skills, a solid resume. But every time I applied somewhere, they contacted my old employer, and suddenly the trail went cold. I wasn't getting callbacks. My record wasn't clean anymore. That accusation followed me like a shadow. Within a year, my savings were drained. I couldn't keep up with rent. I had to move out of my apartment and back into my parents' basement. At 32, after years of working my ass off, I was back where I started. But worse, I wasn't just broke, I was branded. Friends faded. Dating? Forget it. I tried going on a date once. Things were fine until she asked why I left my last job. I gave the vague, differences with management answer. She didn't buy it. Later, she Googled me. My name had been mentioned in a tiny local blog about workplace harassment cases. That was the end of that. She blocked me the next day. I spiraled. I thought about ending it more times than I'll admit. Sitting in the dark, staring at a bottle, wondering if it would be easier to just let it all go. The only thing that stopped me was my parents. I couldn't dump that weight on them. So I lived. If you can call this living. What did I learn? That truth doesn't matter. Evidence doesn't matter. Once you're accused, you're guilty in the eyes of everyone around you. People don't wait for facts. They don't care about fairness. They just don't want to be associated with you. I keep my distance now. I don't trust workplaces. I don't trust women in professional settings. I keep every interaction minimal, documented, logged. I never allow myself to be alone with a female coworker. Not ever. Julia? She's probably still climbing the ladder, still flashing that smile, still playing her games. She burned me down and walked away, untouched. Me? I'll never get back the career I lost. I'll never get back the respect I earned. That night at the happy hour didn't just end my job. It ended the man I used to be. The next email is from Marcus. When people tell me, you dodged a bullet, I want to laugh in their face. Because a bullet wounds you and then it's over. What I went through was more like stepping on a landmine. It ripped me apart, and I am still piecing myself back together years later. I was 28 when I met her, Sarah. Divorced, early 30s, with a little boy named Dylan. I wasn't against dating single mothers back then. I told myself I was open-minded, that life was messy, that people deserved second chances. Looking back, I realized I was just naive. Sarah was magnetic. She had this confidence that made you feel like you were lucky just to stand near her. She laughed easily, knew how to make a man feel like a king. From the start, she was upfront about her son. It's a package deal, she said, and I nodded like a fool. At first I was cautious, but then I met Dylan. He was 3, shy at first, but when he warmed up, he clung to me like glue. He would grab my hand when we crossed the street. He would run to me when I visited, shouting, "Pat!" with this huge smile. Something in me melted. My own dad had walked out when I was a kid, and I promised myself I would never be like him. Being a father figure to Dylan felt like redemption. Sarah noticed. She told me over and over how much it meant to her that I cared about her son. "You're the first man who hasn't run when things got real," she said one night, her eyes shining. That hooked me. I thought I had found my purpose. 6 months in, I was spending more nights at her place than my own. I would wake up, make Dylan breakfast, drop him at daycare, then head to work. Co-workers teased me about playing stepdad. I wore it like a badge of honor. I thought it proved I was a man, someone solid. A year in, Sarah started talking about moving in together. "It just makes sense," she said. "We're already acting like a family." I agreed. I gave up my apartment and moved into her house. I started covering groceries, daycare fees, bills. She said money was tight, and I wanted to be supportive. I told myself it was what a good man did. That's when things started to shift. The sweetness faded. Sarah's affection cooled, replaced by criticism. "You're not disciplining Dylan enough. You're too strict with him. You don't understand what it's like to be a real parent." No matter what I did, it was wrong. Meanwhile, Dylan's father was a ghost. supposedly a deadbeat who skipped out on child support. Whenever I asked, Sarah got vague. He's not in the picture. You don't need to worry about him. But I did worry, because as time went on, I noticed Dylan didn't look anything like Sarah's family, and he definitely didn't look like me. I shrugged it off. Kids take after all sorts of relatives. Still, a little seed of doubt was planted. 2 years into the relationship, Sarah started pushing marriage. You're already his dad in every way that matters. Why not make it official, she said. He needs stability. We both do. I hesitated. My gut told me something was off, but I ignored it. Everyone around me, my mom, my friends, praised me for stepping up. You're such a good guy, they said. I let that stroke my ego. I wanted to believe I was building something real. Then came the bomb. I was picking Dylan up from daycare one afternoon when another parent approached me. A tall guy, mid-30s. He looked at Dylan, then at me, then said, "So you're with Sarah now?" I frowned. "Yeah, and you are?" He smirked. Dylan's father. My stomach dropped. I asked his name. It matched the one Sarah always spat out with bitterness, the so-called deadbeat. But here he was, clean clothes, decent car, looking nothing like the loser she described. We talked. He told me he had been sending child support, visiting Dylan when Sarah allowed, but she had slowly cut him out. He had receipts, court documents. My head spun. That night I confronted Sarah. She exploded, screamed that he was lying, that he was abusive, that I was betraying her by even speaking to him. She cried, raged, threw things. For the first time, I saw her mask slip. I didn't sleep that night. I dug through her files while she snored, and there it was, paperwork proving everything the father said. He had been paying support. She had painted him as a villain to make me easier to manipulate. When I confronted her again, she doubled down. So what if he's paying? He's not here. You are. You're Dylan's real dad. She tried to spin it, but the spell was broken. I realized I had been nothing more than a wallet with a heartbeat. I moved out within a week. She begged, threatened, guilt-tripped. You're abandoning Dylan just like your father abandoned you. That one almost broke me. But I knew if I stayed, I would lose myself completely. Leaving wasn't clean. She told Dylan I didn't love him anymore. He cried, begged me not to go. That image still haunts me. That little boy was innocent, but I couldn't let her keep me chained through him. The aftermath was brutal. Friends who once praised me for stepping up turned on me. How could you leave a child you helped raise? They asked. No one cared about the lies, the manipulation, the financial drain. All they saw was a man walking away from a kid. It wrecked me. I fell into depression. For months, I would wake up reaching for a child who wasn't mine. I would hear kids laugh on the street and feel my chest cave in. She had used my father's wounds against me, and it worked. I eventually rebuilt, slowly, but I will never fully recover. Now, when I hear men talk about dating single mothers, I do not sugarcoat it. I tell them the truth. You are not stepping into a love story. You are stepping into quicksand. Your money, your time, your heart, all of it will sink into something that is not yours, and when it is over, you will be the one blamed. I almost became legally bound to raise another man's kid. I almost signed papers that would have chained me for 18 years. What I went through taught me something I can never forget. A single mother doesn't need you. She needs resources, a stand-in, a crutch. And once you stop playing along, you are thrown away. I escaped, but the scars will never fade. Here's an email sent in by Stephen. I remember everything about her. Samantha, freshman year. She walked into the lecture hall like she owned the room. Blonde hair in a messy bun, eyes that made every guy glance twice, posture that screamed confidence. She was the kind of girl who never had to chase attention. It chased her. I was 19, quiet, focused, driven. I worked part-time, studied hard, and had a vision for my future. I wasn't flashy. No tattoos, no sports car, no wild parties. I thought that being responsible and ambitious would count for something. But in college, that doesn't get you noticed. Reckless energy does. Loudmouths do. Bad boys do. She gave me a smile once. The kind of smile you give someone who is harmless, someone safe, someone not worth considering seriously. It stuck with me because that was all I ever got. A smile here, a thank you there, nothing more. I wasn't the guy she wanted. I wasn't even in the category. Throughout those years, I watched her go through man after man. None of them had ambition. Most of them skipped classes, bragged about cheating, threw parties every weekend, spent money they didn't have, and laughed about the chaos they left behind. They were selfish and destructive, but they gave her excitement. She followed them around like they were rock stars, ignoring the reality that none of them had anything to offer beyond temporary thrills. I was useful. That was my role. When she needed notes, I had them. When she needed help with assignments she barely started, I was the one she leaned on. I was thanked with a smile, and then forgotten as soon as something more exciting called her name. She never saw me as anything more than background support. I was invisible until she needed something. At the time it hurt, but I buried it. I told myself maybe someday she would see what kind of man I really was. Maybe when she was tired of the games, tired of being used, she would recognize the value in stability and ambition. But she never did. By the time graduation came, she was still orbiting the same types of men, and I was nothing more than a footnote in her college years. Fast forward more than a decade. I am 30 now. I built myself from the ground up. I landed a stable job in finance, saved carefully, bought my own home, my own car, and stacked investments. I turned myself into the man I wished I was back then, except this time, I did it for myself. I built a future while others wasted their 20s drinking, partying, and chasing shallow thrills. One night I opened my phone and saw a friend request. It was her, Samantha. For a moment I thought it was a mistake. I clicked on her profile. She looked the same but older, tired, worn out around the edges. She had 2 children, both from different fathers, neither father in the picture. Every photo screamed desperation. Night outs with too much makeup, wine glasses in her hand, filtered selfies with captions about new beginnings. Her profile description said she was restarting life, ready for something real, and tired of games. It almost made me laugh. 10 years ago, I wasn't good enough. 10 years ago, she wanted the chaos, the bad boys, the fun. Now, with 2 children weighing her down, no stability, and a history of poor choices, suddenly I was worth reaching out to. Suddenly I was amazing. Suddenly I was the one she remembered. The audacity disgusted me. I remembered sitting in those classrooms, quietly admiring her while she gave her best years to men who treated her like garbage. I remembered working late nights to help her pass classes while she was out drinking and sleeping with the same men who mocked guys like me. I remembered how invisible I felt, how unwanted, how overlooked. Now she had nothing left to give, and she wanted me to be her safety net. I wasn't a man to her. I was a backup plan, a bailout, a cleanup crew for her mistakes. I scrolled through her posts. Pictures of her children with captions about being strong and independent. Pictures of her at clubs, trying to hold on to youth that had long since passed. Inspirational quotes about love, loyalty, and second chances, as if plastering those words over a decade of reckless behavior would erase reality. Every post reeked of desperation and self-delusion. I could almost picture her sitting alone at night, scrolling through her contacts, remembering the quiet guys she ignored, and deciding maybe one of them could save her now. It made me sick. She had no right to come crawling back after years of treating men like me as invisible. I didn't accept her request. I didn't respond to her attempt at reconnecting. I blocked her. Not because I was angry about the past. I've moved on from that. I blocked her because I refused to let someone like that poison the life I built. Sometimes I think about what she tells herself. Maybe she genuinely believes I was the one that got away. Maybe she convinces herself that she always liked me, but the timing wasn't right. Maybe she lies to herself to avoid admitting the truth. The truth is simple. I was never the one that got away. I was the one she didn't want. I was the one she overlooked until life chewed her up and spat her out. She made her choices. She spent her prime years chasing chaos and bad boys. She had children with men who abandoned her. She ignored the men who could have given her stability. That was her decision. Nobody forced her. Now she has to live with it. As for me, I live free. I live on my terms. I worked for everything I have. I wasn't handed anything. I didn't waste my 20s. I didn't blow my future on parties and dead-end relationships. I invested in myself, and because of that, I'm not desperate. I don't need to rescue someone else's mess. When I look back at 19-year-old me, sitting in class, hoping she would notice me. I almost feel pity for him. He didn't understand the game. He thought kindness and ambition mattered. He thought women would value those things. He didn't realize that most of them only recognize value when it's too late, when their beauty fades, when their choices catch up with them, when the men they wanted no longer want them back. That young version of me would have jumped at the chance to accept her friend request. He would have been excited that she finally noticed him. But that man is gone. Experience killed him. Reality hardened him. I don't hate Samantha. She isn't unique. She is a reflection of a pattern, a story played out 1,000 times across campuses, workplaces, and neighborhoods. Women chasing excitement, rejecting stability, and then looking for a soft landing when reality strikes. I am not that landing. The past is dead. She didn't want me when I had nothing. She wanted men who offered her nothing but destruction. Now that I built something, she doesn't get to knock on the door and expect entry. The truth is harsh but clear. She burned her bridges long ago. She will spend the rest of her life chasing stability she already rejected. And me? I will never again let myself be an option for someone who made me invisible when it mattered most. This one landed in my inbox from Victor. I never hit her. Not once. Not a slap, not a shove, not even a raised fist. I want that burned into your brain before you read another word. But the court doesn't care about truth. The police don't care about truth. The system doesn't care about truth. They care about who can cry louder and who can point the finger first. I was married for 8 years. We had 2 kids together. I worked overtime to keep the bills paid. I thought we were solid. Sure, the arguments came. She didn't like how much I worked. I didn't like how much she drank. But I never thought it was fatal. I never thought it would end with me in handcuffs. The fight that ruined everything started over laundry. Pathetic, right? She accused me of not helping around the house. I reminded her I had just worked a 12-hour shift. She screamed. I raised my voice back. The kids were upstairs, probably hearing all of it. Then she did the thing that changed my life forever. She grabbed her phone and dialed 911. "I'm scared for my life," she said into the receiver. "He's threatening me." I froze. Threatening? I hadn't touched her. I hadn't even come close. But it didn't matter. Once those words left her mouth, the machine turned on, and I was the target. The cops showed up 10 minutes later, flashing lights outside our quiet suburban house, neighbors peeking through curtains. The officers came in, asked her questions, asked me almost nothing. She cried on cue, pointed at a bruise on her arm. A bruise I didn't give her. I don't even know where it came from. Could have been from bumping into a counter. Could have been from the gym. But in that moment, it became Exhibit A. They cuffed me in front of my kids. My daughter cried for me, screaming, "Daddy didn't do anything." My son stood there silent, eyes wide, watching his father get dragged out like a criminal. That was the last night I ever slept in my own house. The restraining order came the next morning. I wasn't allowed within 500 feet of her or the kids. I went from full-time dad to a stranger overnight. My clothes, my tools, my photos, everything I had built inside those walls was locked away. She got the house by default. I got a court date. Divorce papers followed. In them, she painted me as a violent abuser, a monster who terrorized her behind closed doors. She told the court she feared for her safety, that the kids were unsafe with me, that I had a temper and a history of aggression. None of it true. None of it backed up by a single shred of evidence. But in family court, tears are evidence. A woman's word is enough. I sat there with my lawyer, listening to strangers talk about me like they knew me, like they had seen me raise a hand, like they had lived in my house. I tried to speak. I tried to explain. The judge looked bored. He had heard it all before. Angry husband, terrified wife. Why waste time with nuance when the script is already written? She got custody. She got the house. She got child support that gutted my paycheck. And me? I got supervised visits at a family center, twice a month, with someone watching me like I was a predator. The first time I walked into that gray room to see my kids, they looked at me different, hesitant, like they weren't sure if they could trust me, like maybe the story their mom told them had wormed its way into their heads. That broke me more than the handcuffs, more than the restraining order, more than the judge's gavel. Watching my own children look at me with fear that didn't belong there. I appealed. I begged. I drained my savings on lawyers. Nothing worked. Every attempt to prove my innocence was brushed aside. The court must err on the side of caution, the judge said. In plain English, that meant my ex could lie with a straight face and the system would hand her everything. Years later, I'm still paying. Still cut off from my kids most of the time. Still writing checks to the woman who destroyed me. Still branded with a reputation that never washes off. You want to know the worst part? There was no trial, no jury, no guilty verdict. Just accusations, paperwork, and a court that chose her tears over my truth. My life collapsed because she picked up a phone and said 6 words, "I'm scared for my life." I learned something brutal through all this. Men don't need to do anything wrong to lose everything. All it takes is one accusation, and the system will burn you alive to protect her. She doesn't need evidence. She doesn't need proof. She just needs to cry. And once she does, you're finished. People tell me to move on, to rebuild, to forgive. But how do you forgive a world that let your kids think you're a monster? How do you rebuild when the courts can strip everything again with a single lie? I am not bitter. I am not broken. I am awake. And I know now that the game was rigged from the start. And finally, we've got one from Brian. I used to laugh at men online who swore women could ruin your life without marriage. I thought it was bitterness. I thought those guys were exaggerating or had to be idiots to get into those situations. I was wrong. The beginning was so normal. I was 31, working in IT, renting a 2-bedroom apartment in a quiet complex. Nothing flashy, but it was mine. I had paid off my car, built up some savings, and I felt like I was finally standing on solid ground. My plan was simple: keep stacking money, maybe buy a house in a few years, and live life at my own pace. Then I met Jessica. She worked at a coffee shop across the street from my office, always smiling, always remembering my order. At first it was small talk, then numbers exchanged, then dates. It felt natural, not forced. She was funny, easy to talk to, and she seemed genuinely interested in me. That first year together felt like I had hit the jackpot. She texted me good morning every day, asked about my work, cooked dinner for me on weekends. She left notes in my lunch bag. She bragged to her friends about me. She even made me feel like she respected my grind. For once, I thought I had someone who saw me, not just my wallet. Then came the idea. "Why don't I move in with you?" she said one night while we were lying in bed. "We're always together anyway. It makes no sense paying rent for 2 places." I hesitated. Something deep in my gut told me not to, but she played her cards well. She made it sound logical. She talked about splitting rent, saving money, cooking more since she'd have a real kitchen instead of her tiny studio. She framed it like a partnership, like we'd both benefit. I said yes. The first month was fine. She moved her things in, we set up her side of the closet, and I actually enjoyed having her around. She paid half of the rent and utilities like she promised. She cooked more, cleaned more, and for a little while, it felt like we were building something real. Then it started. 2 months later, she quit her job, said she was burnt out, said she wanted to figure herself out, and maybe go back to school. Suddenly the rent was all on me. The utilities, the groceries, everything. I raised an eyebrow, but she made it sound temporary. She said she just needed time. That temporary break turned permanent. Weeks turned into months. She stayed home all day scrolling Instagram and watching Netflix. Dishes piled up. The bathroom sink was covered in makeup stains. I'd come home from 12-hour shifts to see her sprawled on the couch complaining she was tired. I tried to bring it up. I asked her to help with the bills until she figured out her next step. She looked me dead in the eyes and said, "If you really loved me, you wouldn't keep score." That line shut me down. I bit my tongue. From there, the fight started. At first small, about groceries, about cleaning. Then bigger. She accused me of being controlling whenever I asked about money. She accused me of ignoring her when I came home drained. She twisted everything into my fault. I stopped feeling like the man in my own house. I started sleeping on the couch to avoid her. I told myself I'd get out, but I dragged my feet. I didn't want to deal with the explosion I knew would come. It came anyway. One night we fought about money again. She hadn't paid rent in almost a year. I told her it wasn't fair. She screamed, slammed a plate against the wall, stormed into the bedroom, and locked the door. I slept on the couch again. The next morning, she was gone. Her clothes, her makeup, her things, all gone. I stood there stunned, half relieved, half confused. I thought maybe she'd finally walked away for good. I thought it was over. A week later, I got a letter in the mail from her lawyer. The letter said Jessica had established residency in my apartment by living there over 6 months, which meant she was legally considered a tenant, which meant I couldn't just wash my hands of her, even though she had packed up and left. She was demanding compensation for her contributions to the household. Compensation? For what? She hadn't paid rent since month 2. She hadn't covered groceries, hadn't paid utilities. She freeloaded off me for almost a year, and now she wanted money for that? It sounded insane. I laughed at the letter, tossed it aside. Then I spoke to a lawyer of my own. The laughter died quick. My lawyer explained that cohabitation laws in my state were murky. Courts leaned toward protecting the weaker partner in domestic disputes. If Jessica could spin her story right, she could get a payout. All she had to do was claim she had sacrificed her career to support me. All she had to do was paint herself as the dependent. The words that came out of my lawyer's mouth still echo in my head. You could win, but it will cost you more in legal fees than what she's asking for. So I fought. For months. Back and forth with her lawyer. I produced receipts, bank statements, proof that she hadn't contributed. None of it mattered. Her lawyer painted me as controlling, manipulative, financially abusive. They made it sound like I trapped her, used her, and then threw her away. She even claimed emotional damages, said I had restricted her access to shared resources. Translation: she wanted money for sitting on the couch in my apartment. Some of my friends sided with her. She told them I was cruel, that I had ruined her. Suddenly I was the villain in a story I never wrote. In the end, I settled because I had no choice. Legal fees drained me. She got $10,000, 10 grand for freeloading and lying. After that, she disappeared. No apology, no accountability, just vanished, probably off to do it to the next guy. I stayed in that apartment, but it doesn't feel like home anymore. Every corner reminds me of her. The couch reminds me of all the nights I avoided her. The kitchen reminds me of the lies she cooked up to bleed me. The walls remind me of how fast I lost control. I didn't marry her. I didn't propose. We never signed anything. And yet she still walked away with my money, my time, and my peace of mind. People tell me to just be more careful next time. But there won't be a next time. I learned the hard way that you don't need a marriage certificate for the system to gut you. All it takes is letting her move in. That mistake cost me $10,000, years of savings, friendships, and trust. I used to think marriage was the risk. Now I know that letting a woman through your door can be just as fatal. One signature on a lease can destroy you. Or worse, no signature at all. Just her things in your closet and her lawyer in your mailbox. That's all for today. Don't forget to hit the like and subscribe buttons. Also, click on the notification bell to know when I drop a new video. Bye.